Okay, so I'm gonna stay with everyone today because the next panel that we have coming up now is actually a panel that is very close to my own heart as an event organizer. It's titled "Will iGaming events ever be the same?" Considering the global pandemic that is happening at the moment, that is restricting the in-person events now for the last 6 months or so. We haven't seen any events, and the question is, what will happen as we go into the future? What will happen when we go into next year? And even if things goes back to normal, when it comes to the virus, will that mean that we will just shoot back as it was to normal, or there will be some permanent changes? So with me today, I have my lovely Shauna O'Donnell of Better Collective, Head of Strategic Events, and Leanne Johnson, who's the owner and founder of Affiliate Insider. So thank you guys for joining me today. How are you guys?
Good, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks very much for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure, guys. And I know that this is a topic which we are all three of us very passionate about. And when we did our prep call here last week, it was a good 2 hours of passionate discussion around this topic. So I'd like to start up the discussion just by giving our predictions. When we go into 2021, especially, what do you guys think will happen as we go forward now with the events? Will we return back to normality with the events? Will there be a slow progress back into the events again? Perhaps Shauna would like to start.
Yeah, I think we're going to see what we'll see in a lot of other industries that involve in-person activity. So I think we'll see hybrids happening for quite a long time. I think definitely talking to the gaming community, there is a real desire to get back to live events. It's very hard to replicate an in-person event online. So I think what we'll see from 2021 onwards is a combination of perhaps local events with an online element. And I think what's happening, and I have to say, I think, like yourself, all the other organizers have done an amazing job of being thrown into a situation and very quickly developing ideas when nobody really knows what's happening. The technology is all very new to us. So I think everyone's done a great job, but I think, and we spoke about this before, is what people are doing because they've had so little time is they're translating a real event into a virtual event. And actually they're two very different things. And I think we need to I think for delegates and attendees, they need to shift their mindset and think that this is not the same as an in-person event. So how do they approach it? What do they want to get from it? And for organizers thinking about with virtual events, what is the aim? Because I think it's very hard to have a virtual event that serves all of the needs you would have met at an in-person event. So maybe thinking about having different events for different people's needs at different times.
Do you agree with that as well, Leanne?
I do. So I think that things aren't going to be coming back to normal anytime soon, and that is going to have an impact in terms of how we manage our businesses, how we manage lead generation, how we connect with people online. All of that culture needs to change. And I just wanted to bring up something interesting. There's a really interesting poll that's happening on GPWA at the moment, and I looked at it yesterday, and the numbers are very, very mixed. They've asked, and maybe I'll give you the link for this, which you can share with the community later, but the response to the question, when do you expect to attend live conferences again, was actually incredibly mixed. And there was about a real split between Q3 of 2021, so in almost a year's time, and then also second half of 2022 or later. So as an industry, people are answering this poll daily, so obviously the numbers are going to change. But up until this point, we don't seem to be very positive about the fact that we're going to be coming back to physical events. And I think that's because it depends on where you are in your life cycle. So, if you're a parent, you've obviously got, childcare problems because your child's only going to school between, 9 and 2 or 3 in the afternoon. That's when you've got time free. So how do you travel? Also, if you've got vulnerable people in your life that you need to be cognizant of in terms of, them picking up the virus, you're probably going to want to limit that. If you're a business owner, you're concerned about your staff, the welfare of your team, continuing your business activities. So I think, as Shanna said, this is a very, very unique and unprecedented time that we're heading into. And I think as an industry, we need to be voicing, what is working for us, what isn't working for us, and then hoping that events organizers can actually, develop the content and the formats that work for all of us all together, because it doesn't appear.
Oh, seem to.
We're hoping to get them up in.
Oh, there we go.
In a year, like by next year. I think, just the travel alone, this month you're in quarantine, next month you're not in quarantine. I think we're going to have to sort of play it by ear and see, but also consider our strategies for the long term. Yeah,
it's some interesting points you mentioned, Leanne, because on the one hand, as this poll alludes to, there is the will of returning back to the events, but then there are so many other components within this as well that will decide if an event is successful or not, right? Like, even if you have 50% who would like to return to an event at a certain given time and they have the opportunity to do so, you have the liquidity of the event itself that needs to also be there, right? So
and I think people want, even if those people want to attend, I think real life events, perhaps for the foreseeable future, the format of that needs to change slightly. We talked about there's been within the events industry some surveys done, and this is across all sectors, not gaming specific, that only 13% of exhibitors are spending at virtual events. So that's a massive drop in income for events organizers. And I think people forget, how much it takes to put on a live event and how expensive it is. And while it doesn't actually give the numbers, I would suggest that 13% are probably spending less on a virtual event than they would on a physical event. So I think you have to really think about that. Like, if you're going to run a live event now, what does it look like? What does it feel like? And who does it really serve? I think for me, though, and I think, events people, you're a certain kind of person if you work in events, because it's really hard work and often it can be quite unforgiving. But when it works, it's absolutely magical, and you both know that because you're both events people. I think actually the onus is on us as organizers to really think about what do events provide. And I think now is a time to see event organizers really put their money where their mouth is. And I've obviously worked for a couple of different organizers, and we're very good at saying we're part of the community and we listen to the community and we do what is right for the community we serve. But if we're very honest, at the end of the day, we're all driven by a P&L and often by shareholders. So I think now it's really about us saying, what does the industry want and how do we best serve them? But also asking the industry to understand that we are also a business and we have staff to pay it, as well. But I think it's time for us to step up and provide what people need, and that is a meeting place and helping people make meaningful connections where they can do business. And I think perhaps for now, my thought is that smaller, more niche events will be more valuable, because you don't want that risk of going to a massive conference or exhibition where in a 5,000 person crowd, there might be two people you want to meet. Whereas if I can go to something smaller, more exclusive, I might pay more for it, but actually that's okay because my budget's changing just now as well. So I might be happier to pay significantly more to be in a smaller room, but where I know that a much higher percentage of those people are relevant to me. And that's ultimately what we should be doing all the time as events organizers. But there's lots of mitigating factors in that.
The one thing that I think that's going to change is that the one-size-fits-all model isn't going to be able to be applicable virtually. Like you can have an exhibition and a conference that's going to serve a new entrant into our marketplace who's looking to network, and also the CMO or CEO of a company, because they know that automatically people are going to be there because it's a physical event. And I think virtual events now need to be sort of tailored. Is it a content-rich event? Is it a networking-rich event? Or is it, the bells and whistles innovation of an exhibition where you can showcase your product and give awards and talk about strategies and all of that kind of stuff. So I think it's about being cognizant of exactly what Shana said. What do people want and need, and then giving them that service in whatever format fits. Now, the other thing that I want to say is, 20 years ago when we first had the mobile phones, and I'm old enough to remember that, we looked at these little bricks and we thought, like, how are we ever going to, walk around with a phone like that? What would we need a phone in our pocket for? And look at us today. And I think the same can be said about virtual events is, we take for granted that we can travel freely, that we can move between countries, that we can, go and see clients at the drop of a hat. I mean, a flight, you can, as Shanna says, she goes to Denmark and back in a day, usually from London City Airport, I would imagine. So, we might be restricted in terms of where we can and can't get to, and it means that we need to switch our mindset to make what is available work harder for us. So, and you touched on a lot of that stuff previously, Shannon, where you said, you're going to have to get prepared to go to digital. It's not just about showing up anymore. Now it's about showing up and understanding how can you monetize that event for your business? How can you make sure that your team is networking before, during, and after that event? Are they going there for the content? If so, is the content good enough? Is it actually going to teach, or is it just, a kind of show and tell? So I think we're going to see a lot of changes in terms of the types of digital events that happen, because there has been a move to pivot very quickly, which I think we've done incredibly well. Sigma, SBC, IGB, everybody has pivoted and provided products and services as best they could in a short amount of time to keep people connected. But I think now it's about taking it to the next level and about really, truly understanding what the industry is going to need next. Because if we are feeling this way, and 30% of our industry is saying, yeah, maybe we'll come back next year, but the rest are saying maybe the year after, that's a long stretch of time to not be doing new business. We can't do that. So, I run small networking events. I don't run big exhibitions and conferences, but we've moved from having an audience to having a community of people that want to help one another. And I think that is how events organizers are going to have to change as well.
Yeah, because the culture is changing during this period of time, of course, and even when things go back to normal, let's say if we, in a good case scenario, that the vaccine is effective and so forth. First of all, the culture is changing, but secondly as well, the organizations are not sleeping right now, right? Like the organizations have to continue to do their business. So someone like you, Shauna, heading the strategic events of Better Collective, it's imperative for your business to continue to create connections, and to do that now you have to find out new ways to do that, right? And as we go forward,
I mean, we're looking at how we can connect. Obviously we're connecting digitally with people, but now I'm looking at how as a business we can connect physically with key partners. And I think a lot of that for organizers is about having really, so I think it comes back to relationships you have with the industry. So with us, it's about relationships we have with key partners. And for us, having really open and honest conversations about what they do and don't feel comfortable, because the whole point, again, is to serve that market and to do something that meets their needs. So I don't want to do something that works for us, but not for other people. And I think, just to come back to something Leanne said, I think everyone has pivoted amazingly well, but I think where we are now is this is the new normal, and this is for the foreseeable future what it will be. So I think we all need to kind of change our mindset, as in this is not a stopgap, and we all need to think about how we adjust, like, moving forward, both delegates and organizers. And I think while it's very hard because everyone's desperate to just push content out and make sure that they're connecting and that they're still running the shows they said they would, and I understand why people have got budgets, but actually I feel like we almost need to all just stop, take a breath, take stock of what's worked, what's not worked, actually probably have some really good conversations with our technology partners, because they're developing all of this stuff really quickly as well, and then all come together. And the other thing I would say is that I think, the calendar for next year, whatever happens, is looking incredibly busy, really busy. And I think we need to see some sort of collaboration with the big organizers, because again, we constantly talk about there's so many events, we can't manage all of the events. And yet next year seems like it's going to be a roller coaster. We're never going to stop. And I think I understand how hard it is coming from that background, but I think really they need to talk to each other and have some conversations, because it's going to be unmanageable. And I think they need to find a way to collaborate, because it's only by all of us working together as a community that we can move forward.
Yeah, I mean, there's different aspects to this, because, and we touched on this when we spoke last week. I remember being 20 odd years old, coming into the industry and going to these events and having the networking and the parties, and it was like an amazing experience. And now you think, if we are going to not be able to have those networking experiences, and those experiences help me build my network. I mean, let's be straight up about it. When you're out at these events, you're out until all sorts of hours in the morning. Those are when the magic conversations happen, where the memories are made. We're not going to be able to give that to younger digital marketers coming into the industry, at least for the next year or two, until it's safe to do so. So how are these guys connecting? Where are they hanging out? And how do we engage these guys in the platforms that they are used to? And already now, 6 months in, there's something that's been developed called Zoom fatigue. It's actually a psychological thing that's been discovered. And it's, how is the technology going to be able to fit what we are going to need? Because it needs to be more than one-dimensional, especially if we can't get back to physical. So how do you build a meaningful relationship with just Zoom or video or Skype or chat? There needs to be other things. And I think virtual reality is something, and kind of like AI and the tools that sit around marketing automation, I think that needs to be plugged into virtual events as well, so that experiences and connections can be a little bit more personalized. Because otherwise, how are we going to move forward,
Yeah, the question. I think that's interesting as well. I don't think the technology is there yet. Like we are seeing some VR, like we are studying different platforms and so forth for virtual. And we are seeing now some of these virtual environments popping up where you kind of move around an avatar and these type of things. I think for that to work, you have to bring in like a proper game studio, like an EA or DICE or someone.
Yeah.
Throw in $50 million and just produce a really great environment for these type of virtual events, and figure out, what triggers people, what keeps people in that environment. When people who play video games know this well, you need this like constant burst of serotonin boost, to be able to stay in that environment, right? And I think maybe that is what is lacking a little bit sometimes in these kind of new environments, that you go in there, you go around for 10 minutes and you go back to your inbox kind of thing.
I mean, I remember, and I don't know if Leanne does, but there was a virtual event maybe 10 years ago, and it wasn't like FIFA, but it was like you had an avatar and you could walk around, and for all that, when it happened, it was quite clunky, but actually I weirdly think that that's what's missing.
Yes.
From a lot of the platforms, as amazing as they look. But again, when you're saying, maybe it's going to take, a serious investment in working with a major technology partner and someone who already does this, that's perhaps a perfect example of if organizers came together. No one's got 50 million quid, but if organizers came together to create a platform where everyone could work collaboratively and share software, I think that's a good example. And maybe actually it's for us now to learn from your industries like esports. Esports have moved completely seamlessly online because they're originated there. So now tournaments, so they've gone from virtual to real life, and now they're back to virtual. And they've done that really seamlessly because they've built their community online. And I think it's like Leanne says, it's about where, for these younger digital marketers and for us oldies as well, like where are we already hanging out? Are we creating platforms and spaces when actually everybody's already hanging out somewhere else? Like if everybody's at the pub, don't ask them to go to a different pub, just meet them where they, it's like meeting people where they are.
But also I think the entire marketing complement of, because your physical being isn't going to be there. You can't just walk past the stand and go, oh, hey, hi, how are you? Where are you working now? Come in for a drink. That stuff isn't going to happen anymore. So all of that small talk, that water cooler moments, that identifying that connection, that isn't there anymore. And people are not used to sharing or spilling their guts online like this. Like, I don't know you, I've never met you, I don't really know. I judge a person by what shoes they wear. I can't even see your shoes. So I'm old school. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, I'm going to identify with you. It's like when you go shopping. Your shop front is everything compared to like how you look, how you dress, what you say. You're taking all of that in when you're trying to build a connection with someone, and you just don't get that on a one-dimensional screen. So I think technology, most certainly, and I think we can certainly look at the esports industry and the tournament providers, but also the marketing around the event for operators, affiliates, whoever's going to these events, that can be clever too, because it doesn't have to only be at the event. It can start and lead up to the event. It's about merchandise. It's about using good old-fashioned posts. I mean, the other day somebody sent me a beautiful notebook with a little note, and it said, next year may all your dreams come true. And on the front it said my dream journal, and I was just floored by that, because nobody does that anymore, and it stuck with me now, and I thought, what an amazing thing to do. And it came through my letterbox. There was no social distancing issues. It was all nicely packaged and branded. And so I think, it's about getting clever about our marketing as well, in terms of how we utilize these digital events.
And also, it's like being clever and actually maybe not being so clever. Like there's some really simple, like sending someone a postcard. That's really easy to do. It's really inexpensive in terms of marketing, and it's really personal.
Yeah, true.
But I also think, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, last point.
What's really interesting though is there's not necessarily in my day job, but I've got because situations like this force innovation, and our events have been the same for a really long time, and sometimes you need disruption. You need disruption to change things and force innovation and force us to stop and think about what we're doing. And every other day I'm like, oh, that's a great idea. I want to do this and I want to launch this. So I think we'll get some real positives come out of it. And I think it's hard just now, but I think in the long term it can only be a good thing that we're forced to change and adapt and think about a bit like all of life, but we're forced to think about what really matters and what do we need from things and how do we get that.
I completely agree with you as well, Shannon. I'm sorry to interrupt now, Lena, but we are a little bit out of time, I'm afraid. As we know, let's continue this discussion, and we should do a second part to this at some point soon, I think. But I want to thank you guys. Thank you both for coming on today. And Leon, I hope to someday meet you in person as well. And you can check out my shoes. I can just tell you they are white right now. I don't know if you can.
That's fine.
There we go. I hope that feels better. But I wish you both a really good day. Thank you so much for coming on board today.
Thanks, Pierre.
Really appreciate it.
See you soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.